What is up, guys? We are back with a brand new broadcast, and we cut Ryan out of here.
He's gone. Bye-bye, Ryan.
That's not true. Ryan is coming a few minutes late. He is on his way, so he'll be joining us in about 5 minutes. But for right now, we wanted to go ahead and go live and talk to you guys about these about
Dream speakers.
Well, what are we talking about? Dream speakers. That's right. So, what do you think about these dream speaker idea? This came about while we were talking, right?
Yeah, we talk a lot, and I think a lot. I think every speaker builder probably thinks to themselves a lot. There's so many exotic drivers. There's so many difficult enclosures that we can think about building, dream about building. So, yeah, I mean, there's just endless possibilities. So that's why we think it's a good topic. We want to hear what you guys have to say about your own dream speakers as well, not just ours.
And when we're talking about this, we want you to understand that we're not talking just about what the speakers look like, although we will be talking about that, but also what drivers would you use. So when we're doing this, if you guys have something that you would like to talk about, make sure to bring that up and we can see if we can talk about it.
Absolutely.
All right. So when we were doing this, I asked you to come up with a speaker that you would design on. Like, first of all, what would yours be around? Would it be around home theater? Would it be around home audio? What would it be around? Would it be around 2-channel listening?
So hey, Ryan.
Hi, sorry I'm late, guys.
Oh, you're all good.
It's okay. Oh, no hat today either.
Yeah, no, I'm cleaned up.
We just started talking about if we were going to build a system like that, what are we looking at? Are we looking at a 2-channel system for music, or are we doing a home theater system? Like, what does our dream system actually look like and consist of?
Yep.
So you were talking, Cameron. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I'm thinking 2-channel for sure is where I'd put all my emphasis. And if it can do home theater pretty well, so be it. Dream speaker, yeah, I'm going to have a definite emphasis on 2-channel stereo. Absolutely. But the exception to that is my 2-channel stereo is going to use a mix of pro drivers. So we're going to have the efficiency and the headroom to do home theater, I think. I actually looked up. Go ahead. I actually looked up. I looked up the thing I've been referencing in my mind that I saw on Instagram or something a couple years ago, and it's actually advertised as a home theater speaker.
Well, it's interesting, and I think you're right that you'll have the efficiency to be able to do just about anything with an Ultimate Speaker. And I have some ideas, and I'm going to show you some pictures of some things that I found that I think would be really cool materials. But when I think of a dream speaker system, I don't think just of what I'm going to be using as far as drivers, but also what does it look like? What types of materials are we going to be using? Because when we start talking about dream speaker systems, we're going to be talking about a lot more exotic materials that you could use. A lot of times we get it stuck in our minds that we have to use MDF or we have to use something like a birch plywood or something, which you can absolutely do, and there's nothing wrong with it. But when we start talking about dream systems, we can start talking about casting it out of cement. We can talk about using granite. So, for example, let me share this real quick. There was anyone that's going to Axpona, I'll be at Axpona this year. So anyone that's going to Axpona, let me know, and if we catch up, we can catch up. But I ran across this one last year. It's called Acora Acoustics.
Yep.
And they do a lot of really cool things. And these are some of the things that I would want to think about implementing when I'm designing a dream speaker. If you notice, first is a shape, right? It's not a normal shape. It looks almost like a triangle. And that is solid granite that they cut at that specific angle to be able to get rid of all the resonances. And by using a material like this granite, I mean, these speakers, I know what drivers they were using, and you can actually see right here, you can actually tell because you can see the design there. So you know what drivers they're using, and the drivers are good. I'm not going to say anything bad about that, but their enclosure that they chose with this solid granite material makes these sound significantly better. It's no resonance at all. Very, very impressive.
Except you need a forklift to move.
I think if you can afford these, you've got the budget to rent a forklift.
It's
Did you
like,
hear them,
oh,
Nick?
I think they need to be towed in another degree. Let me get the forklift rental.
I'm going to call Sunbelt Rentals.
But it is a good idea. I mean, that's kind of the thing that we're talking about. If you're talking about your dream speaker system, hopefully they're going to be in that one spot forever anyway. So why not use an exotic material that you wouldn't use otherwise?
Yeah. Did you hear
Yeah, I
these,
agree.
Nick? You say you
I
actually they were
did. Oh
demoing
yeah,
them?
they
Yeah.
are amazing. Um, if anyone's going to why can I not think of
Exponent.
Exponent? If anyone's going to Exponent, you should definitely check out these. They sound really good, and it was interesting too because they even played their bookshelf speakers, and they sounded so much better than you would normally typically hear, and just a tweeter in a mid range, and they sounded great. Once again, just part of that is the shape, and part of it is, of course, the material that they're using as well.
Yeah.
Are those a 4-way with a coaxial mid and tweeter, or is that just a really big tweeter?
I'm not sure. I didn't hear these ones. These ones are just on their main page, so you would have to. It does almost look like a full range driver, and I don't know what this one is. I don't know if it's their.
So
Yeah.
this
Ah, just
flagship,
curious.
they had at it would have been, I guess, this time last year or the year before. Maybe
This
2
this
years
was
ago.
one that we heard last year. It was
That's
sounded so
beautiful.
good. Yeah, sounded great. Why not get your granite company to do that? All right, what were you saying? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Well, so they had those taller ones. They looked exactly like that model you had on screen, set up in a room that had to be like several hundred feet wide by several hundred feet wide. It was a ballroom, and they were the only company in the room, and they were demoing them. But they had them like 30 feet apart, so I couldn't hear it. You can't hear anything about that. They didn't have any chairs set up. It was really odd, but they were there, so I guess I technically heard them, but not in a real
Hey,
room.
they're not even that much. They're only 430 pounds. You could lift that with
Yeah,
your pinky, Ryan.
only.
Yeah. Those ones were a 3-way setup. And I'm not saying that I would necessarily do that exact design, but I like the idea of using exotic materials.
Yeah. I do like that design. There's something really to be said about vertical reflections, how they've done that. A 3-way with MTM mids and bass drivers near the floor. That's it's actually I don't know if I've ever done one like that, but it's a good idea.
Do you want to expand upon that, or you just want to say it's a good idea?
Well, in the mid range, you have the MTM, so you can take care of your vertical reflections, and then at the base to mid driver crossover, you have your bass frequencies close to the floor, so you're going to negate your floor reflection, and then through the crossover point, you have some distance there, so you should have vertical cancellation as well. So they're not going to be like that point source thing. They're going to be almost the opposite. They're going to really constrain the vertical reflections, which can be a good thing if you do it right.
Yeah.
It's quite a technical thing to get into, but it's there if someone's willing to look into it.
Technically, I don't know if that company is going to be at Exponent, but they were there last year, so hopefully they are. All right. What about you, Ryan? What would you like? What materials would you be using? Would you be using any exotic materials, or would you just use MDF and plywood?
Well, I first of all, I'm the opposite of Cameron. I would probably go for a dream home theater system that can do 2-way really well, or stereo really well. And I'd use exotic materials, but I think granite or concrete is great. Like there's no doubting that can be really good for resonance and stuff like that. I would probably still use real wood, maybe bonded somehow like epoxy to an aluminum inner enclosure, or maybe the enclosure would be aluminum with a wooden face. I'd want it to look good, is I guess what I'm getting at. I'd want the performance there, but if I'm building a dream system, I want it to look really good. So like a polished aluminum, or maybe it's aluminum and I would go with aluminum because you get the strength, like the rigidity, thank you. But you're not 450 pounds, because I do want to move my speakers.
Oh, come on. Just lifted the weights. You can do it.
And I'd probably use some crazy like mahogany or something something illegal to cut down, something, something very probably like a darker wood for to try to keep. I love maple, but it's a bright colored wood, and then if
Not
you
for the
get like
theater, yeah.
in your theater, I'd want like some kind of dark colored wood.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love mahogany. I also love walnut. Walnuts are really one of my favorites, especially for the darker setting like that. And I don't see why you wouldn't do at least a solid front baffle or wood somewhere on it. And I think that's where when you start talking about your dream systems, you start getting at mixing and matching materials, right? So it doesn't have to be. A lot of times when we build DIY speakers, we use what materials we can have on hand. So it's MDF. Sometimes we will use a veneer. Sometimes we'll go crazy and use the front baffle and be hardwood. But I think when you're going with a high end ultimate speaker, this is where like I would take the sides and I would do designs on them, and I would maybe have some like walnut inlays on the, and then aluminum sticking maybe on the outside, and breaking up those different portions of the side cabinet, doing different designs on it. And for me, like that's what you want. You want, when you were talking about these ultimate speakers, we're not talking about just sound. I think we're also talking about looks. Whenever you talk about the more expensive speakers, a lot of times it doesn't necessarily come down to them being significantly better sounding, although they can. It also has to do with the way that they're manufactured, and then it's significantly better manufacturing and materials that they use to give you that look, that high-end look.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty high-end speakers, and I think to myself, I couldn't build these if I wanted to. Like they're so good, the paint and everything. Kevin Gardner says aluminum. Now you're talking Magico. I believe about 10 years ago, I heard a pair of Magico speakers, and they were aluminum, and they sounded very good. I might have some of those details wrong, but I remember a pair of speakers that I'm pretty sure were aluminum, and they blew me away how good they sounded.
Yeah, and Magicos, they're beautiful and they're industrial in that the aluminum that you see is the enclosure, and it's just a finished aluminum. And so you're actually seeing the raw material, and they're able to shape it and buff it to such a high standard. They're absolutely stunning beyond how they sound. They're a work of art. They charge like it though, but
Yeah,
there's no cheap way to extrude and bend aluminum in those ways.
No.
And so I get it.
So here's some Magico style speakers if you guys are interested.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, though. I think it also comes down to what products you'd use. And me and Cameron were talking about this ahead of time. One of the ones that has intrigued me the most, and I have not used them yet, would be I've used the TechStream by Eminence, and I really love that driver. And I would love to see I'd love to use the TechStream by SB Acoustics. They have some TechStream, both a tweeter and some mid-range, and obviously woofers. All TechStream material. Now, for those of you who don't know, TechStream is a form of carbon fiber. It's however they make it that it's considered TechStream, but it has some acoustical benefits, such as things like your waterfall graph ends up being a lot cleaner, ends up being able to be faster, more transient, which I like the idea of. And so I think I would like to try to use some of those TechStream drivers, both in the woofer, mid-range, and tweeter, like all of them. Just use them all, set up. The only problem with the TechStream is they're expensive. So the tweeter, for example, if you buy it from...
But that doesn't matter with this speaker.
No.
You have all the money.
It doesn't. But if you were to buy the Satori TechStream tweeter, I think that one in and of itself is like $300. So that's just one tweeter. Get two of them. That's $600.
It's all in context though, right? We were looking at speakers that were $100,000, and so you got a lot of your budget left if you just and 100,000 for high end speakers is the low range, right? That's kind of a starting point for the esoteric stuff. So we got a lot of more cash to dig into.
Yeah. One of the best tweeters I ever heard was a beryllium compression driver.
So this is interesting because the reason why they went with Techstream, according to Eminence, was because it had almost all the same benefits of beryllium, but significantly cheaper.
Okay.
Mm.
I would like to hear
So
that.
yeah, come on over. I have speaker. I have right actually. Hold on.
So if I'm not mistaken, beryllium is toxic,
There you
right?
go. Here's
Yeah, you
one
gotta
right
be.
here.
Oh, you got one to try.
Well, I
Nice,
have 3.
nice.
2 of
Yeah,
them are in my
beryllium.
theater though.
The ones I had, they had a giant warning label on the box, like "Don't breathe this in," and
Do not eat.
yeah, definitely don't eat it. But I think it's kind of weird. If I remember right, it basically said, "Don't open this box or you'll die," but you do anyways. Like it's like, well, I purchased this product, I'm gonna use it.
They have to
It's-
put that.
yeah, it was kind of a funny thing. It was like, this is for industrial purposes only. The proper equipment must be used to do this, and then only safe once installed in the compression driver. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, here we go.
All right, let me touch this. Did you discuss that they don't make it anymore? I don't believe that's actually accurate. Last I
Really?
heard from them, no. I thought he was talking about the Techstream driver.
I don't know.
So maybe I'm mistaken. He'll have to clarify that, but I don't believe that's true. They're not selling it on Parts Express right now because they haven't got any in, and it's just not in stock. So I don't know. Maybe he's talking about beryllium though.
It could be. Maybe I'm gonna die. I don't know.
Like,
Actually,
I guarantee it. I guarantee.
I'm gonna die.
100%.
Yeah. Those
100% guarantee.
Playback mentioned those Iwata horns. Well, I've used a couple of Iwatas, but I use some big Iwata 300 hertz horns, and I use the beryllium compression drivers on those. So that might be where you're thinking of that. And I got them through Eric at DIY Sound Group. I don't know if he still has those or not. Originally, they came from, it was like Auto Tech or something in Europe. So they are a little tricky to get. But Iwata is just a horn design. Like, if somebody can manufacture a horn design, they should be able to manufacture an Iwata.
That's the same with a lot of people that like the Cios horn.
Yeah. That one, Eric actually has injection molds for, so it's possible to semi-mass produce those. The Iwata were
Why does he not do that? Do you know? Like, why he doesn't just keep those on stock for people to buy? Like, that's a lot of people want to buy them and use them, but
they're I don't know how profitable it is, and the injection molds will degrade over time, and
sure,
you can just imagine dealing with a Chinese company to restore those injection molds, and I don't know if it's worth it for him. But I shouldn't speak for him. I don't know.
So something you probably don't know about me is I grew up in an injection molding manufacturing company.
Oh,
yeah, cool. My dad owned an injection molding company, and so did my uncle. Actually, my uncle still does. My dad does not anymore. But, yeah. Anyway,
Base That Hurts. Haven't you been getting your theater going for like, I don't know, 15 years?
This is a different Base That Hurts from the one on AVS forum.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. This guy actually, he told me that he just moved into a new house and he wants to get his theater going. This is an interesting thought. So what type of speaker are we building? Because, for example, I know he uses Definitive Technology speakers, which are a dipole design, right? It has speakers on the front, speakers on the back, firing to help fill up the room with area. Most people are just going to use like a standard speaker design, a 2-way, a 3-way, a 4-way. Are we doing full range? Or what are we doing?
Go ahead, Cameron.
I think I actually, you know what? I think I want a full range speaker. And honestly, most of the time, my philosophy isn't like nothing I'm building I'm that interested in getting full range out of, just because it's such a high order, tall order. But I think for dream theaters or dream speakers, I'm going full range, or at least attempt to with
Yeah.
DSP for sure. Even if I wind up high passing, or even if I wind up crossing over to subs, I'm going to try to I'm going to shoot for full range.
All right, Ryan, I'm curious what you're going to say. Let's hear it.
I'm going to shoot for about 40 hertz, which I don't consider full range. But if I am in the stereo mood and I want to be old school, I can click it into pure audio mode and still get pretty much full range music. If it gets down sealed, I'm going all sealed system. And if it gets down to 40 or 50 hertz, I'm probably not going to miss anything with conventional music. And if I'm doing electronic music or something, I'm putting on the subsystem. So I'm not going truly full range on my mains just because
So
I
if
feel
you
like
run,
it's unnecessary.
if you're running your theater, are you going to allow the?
No,
Are you running them full range, or you cross them
no,
over?
crossing them over for sure. Everything's going through into the LFE stream.
Why?
Yeah, because you should not have a base signal come from one source. Basically, so I do not want, if there is an effect coming from the front left, and it only comes from the front left, it'll be very difficult to get that to sound lifelike and have a. I don't want to say to get a flat response because some people will argue with that, but to get the room to not mess that up will be very difficult.
Yeah.
Whereas if you run it through the subwoofer system, you're not going to hear that effect from the front left. You're just not at like 30 hertz or something. But if you run it through your LFE system, then you're going to get better dynamic range. You're going to get a much smoother response because in my dream system, I have like 6, 7, 8 locations where I have subs. I'm going with like
All sealed. All
824s.
sealed. Well,
All
and
sealed.
that's the thing too. If we're going all sealed and your speakers are going to 40, 30 hertz, once you're in your room, you're going to have room gain. You're going to be getting that 30 some hertz. This is a question that a lot of people have. When I made the Epic Hi-Fis, I called them basically full range for music, is what I said. I can't remember the exact tuning frequency, but they were flat down to about 30 hertz. And I'm like, for most music, 98% of music, you're covered. You're covered under there. You don't need that 20 hertz. Now, if you're saying full range for home theater and everything else, sure, I'm going to agree with you. That's not quite full range, but otherwise, I think that if you can get your speakers to play music down to 30 hertz, you're doing really good.
Yeah,
I
I'd
agree.
agree. Even higher. It's amazing when you're listening to music. It's amazing how low 50 hertz sounds.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think they need a lot lower than that. Absolutely, for movies, I mean, there is no bottom in my opinion, and electronic music and stuff like that too could go lower. But
Yeah. So Thustad said, I was talking about the N314X, which is the Eminence driver, the TechStream driver. He said, I wanted to get someone to try it too. As far as I know, last time I talked to Eminence is that they were still going to be restocked. It was just a matter of when. Now, I don't know anything else beyond that. So if you wanted to get more of those or wanted to try them out, I'd give them a call, find out what's going on, say, hey, what's going on? That's one of the reasons why I have not finished this project. Earlier, Kevin Gardner said, hey, Nick, your 212 towers are great, I'm sure. Of course, he does. I don't think he's ever heard them. Although this man right over here has built them, so he can attest to whether he likes them or not. If he hates them, it's up to him. But they might be too big for smaller rooms. I completely agree. How about 2 8s or 6 in a horn? Probably not going to build 8s or 6 in a horn, most likely. There's a lot of reasons for that. And a lot of people say, well, why don't you build 8s and 6 with a horn? Most of the time when people want 8s and 6s with a horn, they want a shorter cabinet, like not very deep. And what a lot of people don't realize is that typically with a horn loaded system, the depth of the cabinet is actually going to be the horn and and the compression driver, not the woofers. So if you're trying to make it shorter, we're going to be looking at there are horns out there that are short, but in general, we're looking at a deeper cabinet because of the horn and the compression driver. So as long as people understand that most likely the depth of the cabinet is going to be your actual horn and compression driver, then I'd be interested in it. Now, what I was designing and still am designing, it's already designed except for the crossover, is I have two 12-inch eminence drivers in that right over there. There's a room over there. And I have this N314X, and I have two different horns to try with it. And they are both by a company called RCF. When I get that nailed down, I will release that. Like I said, I was waiting for them to come back out with more N314X stock, but I think I'm just going to just bypass and just go ahead and do it anyway. But yeah, and that will come out. Now, the reason why I'm going to do it with that is because I'm going to be tuning it much higher. It'll be closer to like a 60 hertz tune versus, your, I think that one was tuned to 30 hertz. And because of that, you'll be able to use this more for home theater, and it won't be more of a 2-channel listening, where the Audience 212 you could use for 2-channel or home theater.
Yeah. You bring up a great point. So much of horn cabinet size is dictated by the depth of the horn. For even like something like a short horn, you're talking about, by the time you slap a compression driver, a ceramic compression driver on the back of it, you're talking about like 8 to 10 inches. For those big exponential horns, those real pretty horns, you're talking about 12 or 15 inches of depth. And then you've got to make all those proportions work with the woofers that you're choosing. Otherwise, you're segmenting off the box to try to get the right volume. So there's a lot to consider there with horn design.
There is. Scott Kinley, this is kind of funny. He said, hey, Toyd, I want to do home theater speakers, maybe your JTR 212s, which they're not JTRs. He's talking about the Audience 212. The Audience 212 or the 1099s, which we have the designer of the 1099s right below us. That's Ryan. Obviously, the one that I liked better is obviously the Audience 212. I'm not joking. I'm only joking.
I haven't heard yours.
They sound so good.
Yeah, and you're not going to.
They sound so good. I'm getting ready to. I wanted to take them up to my shop, separate from where I build. I'm getting ready to start a big, large format horn design like that, and those are most certainly going to be the reference that I use when I start the crossover design stage. So they're staying put.
I do appreciate
for them because they're massive.
Scott,
yeah, that's one of the problem.
If I can throw in my 2 cents for Scott, just keep in mind that the 1099 was designed like 10 years ago, I think. And what was going on in the DIY community at that time with home theater was mega efficiency. Bass response was not a concern. And a lot of people, EQ was becoming very common, like mini DSPs and stuff. So people were wanting a speaker that was going to get EQ'd. So it's one of those products, like you wouldn't find it commercially because it doesn't have good bass and it requires the user to install it in their system and get it working. It takes, they sound great. And, I think there is a reputation to back that up. But if you're going to build 1099s, and I say this for everyone, I think because it's become popular, a lot of people don't understand the background and the fact that it does take some implementation or a lot of implementation, and you must use a subwoofer system, like a very capable subwoofer system. If you have a single 12-inch Klipsch sub or something, those speakers will crush that sub, and it'd be easy to blame the speakers because they're going to just dominate the room and it might not sound good. Yeah.
You'll never have that problem with the Audience.
Yeah. I mean,
no, I just can't.
Honestly, they're high efficiency. I mean, and they do everything that a high efficiency build should do. But my gosh, I lived with them for like a year, high passed at like 90 hertz. And when I finally took it and ran them full range, I was like shocked at what I'd been missing out on. The thump that comes out of those things and how deep they'll dig for home theater without a subwoofer is really remarkable from a high efficiency build like that.
So the audience,
As long as
the
you,
audience 212 is high efficiency as well.
I mean, relatively.
yeah. So they use all SB audience drivers.
Mm.
So they use two 12-inch SB audience woofers, and SB audience is SB Acoustics Pro Audio Division, and then they use a compression driver as well as their
That
horn.
sounds really cool,
So,
actually.
yeah. So I'll be 100%. SB audience said, "Hey, we want to do a build with you. We think it would be really cool to do a build." And they sent their catalog over and said, "What would you like to build?" And I said, "Why don't we build this?" And I did some tests on some drivers, and they said, "This sounds like a great idea. Let's do it." And then I built it. And then Cameron said, "I want to build those." And I said, "All right, let's build them." And then he built them and goes there. And you know what? While we're talking about this, me and Ryan and Cameron were literally just talking about this the other day,
Yeah,
weren't we?
I want to
Kevin?
do a coax system in my new room. Kevin, I just recently moved into a new house, and the layout I have is screaming for a coaxial driver in my speakers. Right now I'm just using little tiny 2-ways that I brought with me from my old place, and I would love to do a 6 or an 8-inch coaxial with a bass, so it'd be three-way with a bass driver, and I think that would be awesome.
So let me show you the coax driver that I would choose. And I'll tell you why I would use it if we're doing this. This one right here. It's SB Acoustics. It's a 7.5-inch Satori driver. And here's some of the things that they've done that I think are extremely intelligent. And one, they're time aligned. According to the guy that I talked to from SB Acoustics, that they are actually concentric, not just coaxial. So concentric means that the audio is originating at the same time for both the woofer and the tweeter, which means that we get much better off-axis response. And then not only that, if you take a look at the surround, you're going to notice that the surround looks almost more like a PA woofer, like the accordion surround versus that high roll surround. And that's not typical for a driver like this. So people say, well, why is it an accordion surround? And they did that on purpose to help cut down on the diffraction of the waves that would have troubles getting over the high roll surround. So once again, they thought about this really, really well. And they also, even with the frame that they used, everything that they used was all about how can we get this to be the best sounding coaxial on the market. Unfortunately, as far as I know, this design is only made in a 7.5-inch. So if you wanted a 5-inch, sorry, 6.5-inch, sorry.
That makes a
Whatever.
lot of sense. That's a good design. One of the biggest drawbacks of a coaxial driver is the fact that you basically are using the cone of the woofer as a horn or waveguide,
Right. And it's
and it's
moving.
moving, and it's the worst possible shape, and it just sucks. So somebody at SB Acoustics was thinking about that, which is really nice to see.
Yeah.
And it's also why I would do a 3-way
Yeah.
and use a woofer, because I don't want that driver moving a whole bunch. I want to high
Mhm.
pass it and keep the excursion very, very low.
That's exactly what I was going to say too. And it's very similar to what Andrew Jones does on a lot of his speakers. He uses a coaxial on top. You've seen that a lot with ELAC when he worked for ELAC. And then he used a woofer down below for the same reasons.
Yeah, Tang Band, their coaxial that I used actually has a really flat surround. It's a composite basket that I actually just noticed this the last time I used it. Anyway, it's got a really interesting textured flat surround, but so much of the on-axis and off-axis is dictated by this inverted aluminum dome that's inside there, and it does really weird things on axis. It's really shaky, starting at like 8K. And so if you're looking for like, razor flat, you're going to have to use some DSP, but it smooths out a lot on off axis. So, but yeah, I'd love that if the top end were just a little smoother, but it's got that same flat surround that SB used.
Yeah, that's the problem with coaxials.
I think both Ryan and I would both agree with this, that yes, we like horns for home theater in general. Well, it obviously depends on how big your home theater is. But if you're trying to fill up a large space, I like horns for a couple of reasons. One, you can dictate the dispersion pattern, right? So we can dictate where the sound is going to go, both up and down vertically and horizontally. We can decide if we want a narrow window. There's some people in their home theater that like narrow windows better, where they like the sound to be very easily placed. Like this is happening from this front left speaker, and this is happening from the front right speaker, and they want more of a narrow dispersion. Then you have other people that like really, really wide dispersion, right? And so they'll get a wide dispersion horn. That way it does a better job filling the whole area and with sound. And really, that's going to be completely up to you. So I like the idea of using a horn, but I also like the idea of using a horn because of the efficiency that it can provide, assuming you're using woofers that can also be high sensitivity. When you do that, you get a lot of benefits. One is lower distortion from your amplifier because your amplifier doesn't have to push as hard, lower distortion from your drivers because your drivers don't have to push as hard. And finally, you get the full dynamic range. When we're watching a movie, we want to make sure that we don't run out of excursion on our drivers. And we want to make sure that we don't run out of amplifier power. So if we have a high sensitivity driver, high sensitivity woofers, and we're pushing that with 1 to 2 watts, which is all we're doing, and we have a 500 watt amplifier, well, guess what? Even though during those dynamic scenes, you're going to have a really clean sound, and you're not going to worry about hitting any of your dynamic
compression limit,
your dynamic range, dynamic compression limits, yes, on either the driver or the amplifier. And so for me, I like high sensitivity for home theater.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially if it's
I
bigger.
agree, Scott. And getting back to the subject, my dream speaker, again, I said I would design a home theater system first and foremost, and it would very likely use horns. They're just all those things Nick said, they're high sensitivity. You can control the dispersion based on the type of room you have. They're big and they're expensive, but this is a dream system, so who cares about that stuff, right? In my little room that I have in my new house, I'm not likely to go horns, but that's because of the room constraints I'm dealing with, which I'll hopefully share on my channel soon.
And that's, once again, that comes down to the room too. Like, for example, I have a game room. It's actually the room right next door where me and the kids play Xbox and stuff together, right? It's fun. But probably 12 feet from the couch to the screen, and it's got a 120-inch screen in there with an ultra short throw projector. I'm not going to do horns in that room. It would be overkill.
No, it wouldn't.
Like
No,
insane overkill. It would. Oh, it would be overkill. It would be overkill. So I'm going to be using that. In fact, I might even use those 7.5-inch Tories. It all depends, but I'm not going to be using horns. And part of the reason is I don't want to have to put the subwoofers that I would have to keep up with the horns in there either, because then I have to find a room for it and place for that too. But yeah, I am a big fan of horns. If we're going to build a dream system for home theater, it's definitely going to be a horn loaded system.
Ryan, I know Nick knows the answer or has seen this. Ryan, have you seen the BNC 18-inch triaxial?
I don't think I've seen that.
She's a new kid on the block.
Oh yeah, by BNC.
Yeah. I was told I could build with one of those. I'm honestly afraid to take the challenge on. I don't know what I'd do with it, but if you look at the response, it's a little crazy. It's a constant directivity with the coaxial behind an 18-inch woofer, and I mean,
I don't actually like the idea of it, to be honest with you, but I'm glad you like it. Here, I'll show you
strictly for the shock factor, the wow factor. I mean, more than practicality.
Oh yeah,
yeah, there she is.
Oh yeah,
it's got a horn in the middle of it so I believe what it uses is the compression coaxial on the back. So the compression coaxial, for those that don't understand that, it looks like a normal coaxial driver, but it has 2 speaker terminals on there. And that's because both the tweeter and mid-range are there in the same compression driver. And those, my understanding, are time aligned as well. So we have, your mid-range and tweeter down here and your compression driver, and then your, of course, 18-inch woofer right there.
Just put it in a single box on like a
It
4
would
foot
it
high
would
stand with a really, really wide base because it's going to weigh 100 pounds at the top of the stand. Call it a day.
I'll tell you, if I did that, I would use active DSP. If I did something like active DSP and then put it in, you know what I would put it in? If I was going to build a dreams, I would put it in a giant sphere.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how cool would that be? Like a giant sphere looking thing. And then Ryan can't be like, I can't move it. We just roll it.
it. Yeah.
and then you could put it wherever you want. And I think, you know what else I think would be cool? If we're doing a giant sphere like this, I think it'd be neat to do an epoxy where part of it is like clear, like so clear epoxy cylinder, and where you can kind of like see the internals of what's going on inside there, see the back of the driver, see the not completely clear. I'd want some of it to be like opaque, like a greens and blues, and just
That's
kind
actually a
of
really good
be
idea
a
for a
really
dream
cool looking
system.
design.
If you had really high-end
Yeah.
drivers, I'd want to show it all off. So I don't want to degrade performance, but if you did it out of really thick glass or plexiglass or something, and then you could actually see the drivers and do the wiring and the crossover all really nice, or if it's active, then you don't have that part. But yeah, that'd be kind of cool. It wouldn't be the best for reflected light and things like that, but it would sure be cool.
It'd be cool.
Scott's got all the great questions. Scott, let me tell you this. This is one of my favorite right here, horns from Parts Express.
Oh, yeah,
this is the Dayton Audio.
I was going to say that one's been around a long time. That's been used a lot too. You can find lots of info on it.
It's the H6512 by Dayton Audio. If you use the link in my channel on my description, you should get 5% off of this too. There's a code there to get 5% off. They're cheap. They're like $13. This is considered a constant directivity horn, which is better for home theater typically. It does a really good job of getting wide off axis. It's a clone of an old JBL horn. That's what it is. And check this out, Ryan. You may not have seen this. Look at the compression driver on it.
It comes with that on it?
Oh, no.
You put that on.
That's no, but look how it's.
Is that the BNC?
Look how big it is.
It's a little Neo thing.
It's tiny. It comes in a box as big as that.
How big is the diaphragm?
Here it is. Here. 1 inch.
I haven't used it.
Oh, so they use it's called the HLX. They use a helix to be able to, I understand, time it properly. I'm not real familiar with the internal understanding of a compression driver as much as but they explained it to me that there's a helix inside, and this is the entire compression driver, and it weighs like a couple pounds. It's very like compared to other compression drivers. The only problem with this, you can buy these at Parts Express, by the way, guys. They're cheap. They're so cheap because
less material.
There's not much to them. Yeah, I think they're like they're under $100. They're like $80, I think. The only problem is they do take the screw size is not normal. Because as far as like the normal spacing, because it's actually smaller than like the normal spacing you'd buy on a horn. So you just have to drill it out. And that's what I did. I actually created a 3D printed model that you can 3D print off, and it shows me exactly where the screw holes are. It lines up directly into the horn. It pops down for the 1 inch exit, and then goes. It's a really cool driver.
Mentions a Fatal Pro model with a 1.4 inch diaphragm. I agree. Like, I don't know if my dream system would do things this way, but I think
that's a THX horn, right?
I don't know. I was gonna talk about the diaphragm size though. I like I was saying, my dream system might not look like this, but I think really high value home theaters will use a 1.4 inch diaphragm, 1 inch exit, compression driver, horn, or waveguide, whatever you want to call it, about a 12 or 15 inch waveguide and a 12 or 15 inch pro audio driver. You can get into an LCR set of speakers for under $1,000 in parts, probably, that will just dominate most home theaters if you just follow that formula, and there's lots of them on the internet.
Yep.
All right, so this is the DH350-8. It's a 1-inch neodymium compression driver. And man, you know what? It does not say. The thing is, no, it doesn't say. It just says 1-inch exit. It just says 1-inch. So I don't know what the diaphragm size is. I would imagine it's still 1-inch because it's pretty
I once used a
pretty
1-inch
small.
diaphragm Neo tweeters, a thread-on one. I can't
Yeah.
remember the model number. I used a single cap high pass, so first order high pass on it, and I used it in a pro setting, a pretty quiet one, but it was loud compared to home theater. And I personally witnessed that thing go on for over 10 years in a pro setting and not melt. I was actually surprised myself. It was very capable.
So interestingly enough, this is another thing I was going to say is that the HLX, believe it or not, has a crossover point of 1 kilohertz,
Oh, sure.
like a low end, which is, I mean, that's
For the
great.
smaller driver?
Right. But the thing is, I mean, it's so small. This is what I like to tell people too. A lot of times when you see a compression driver, it'll give you a recommended crossover point, 1.2 kilohertz, 1.5. And there's all kinds of reasons why you have a recommended crossover point. Sometimes it's distortion. Sometimes it's, protection. Sometimes, it all depends on what the reasons are. But assuming that the reason is only for protection, okay, only for protection, then there are often times with home theater, you can get away with a lower crossover point.
Yeah, you're not sending near as much
Because
power to it.
Or getting it near as loud, yeah, or as how or whatever.
Yeah, if you're really savvy, you can actually, just like in a box modeling software, you can actually model the excursion of your tweeter too. You can, some crossover software will allow you to see how much power you're putting into the tweeter at what frequency, based on the crossover filter you're using. And those recommendations, like 1 kilohertz or whatever it is, they're just really a blanket statement. And I have proven to myself, and I've shown other people, how a crossover at a higher frequency is actually less protection than another one designed differently at a lower frequency because of how the slope is and different things. So it's, you can really get into it deep and protect your tweeter if you're thinking straight.
Yeah, if you're going with DSP, you can go 8th order and go down near the FS of the thing because you're going to create a brick wall. So it really depends. If a manufacturer is throwing that spec out, if they're giving you a number in terms of hertz, they're probably talking about a 2nd order or something that they're assuming. So if you go any higher than that, you can probably get away with crossing a little lower, like you said, Ryan. I've got props tonight. This is a Chiara 5080. This is an aluminum. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's a really, really nice aluminum horn. It won't ring like that when it's mounted in the enclosure. Yeah. Anyway, big Celestion compression driver. That's what's coming up next. But something like that would be in the running for a dream home theater system for sure, for myself.
Yeah, I think so. It's so hard to beat. I mean, perhaps if you threw enough money at it, you could get the directivity of a horn using an open baffle system. Complicated and introduces a lot of other problems. You basically need at least a 4-way to make it work, and a dipole tweeter of some kind. That might beat a horn system. But yeah, that my dream system is very likely going to have a big horn and some big pro drivers, very high end ones.
Yeah. So the model that I was referencing, and so people know, it's this obscure company. To me, they were obscure. They're called PBN. Maybe most of you guys have heard them, and I'm out of the loop. Or they're just a small company. They make all kinds of products because I downloaded their catalog. But the MR777, it's got two, looks like 12 or 15-inch woofers, 2 6 or 7-inch mid-range, and then a big ribbon in the middle of that. So it's
can you share your screen?
I can. Let's see how it works.
Open baffle CBT controls dispersion really well. I want to run an idea by you in a minute. So both of you guys. Oh yes, I see.
Are you guys seeing that?
Yeah, the one on the right, the 1777, is that one?
Yeah, MR. I mean, to me, honestly, they make some really beautiful designs. Don't look at the price list, everybody. But yeah,
Dream
that
speaker.
dream speakers. I mean, so many of these horn designs are just so beautiful. But that ribbon in the middle, keeping up with those high efficiency drivers, I'd like to hear the things at least.
I'm not sure if I'd want to go with a ribbon personally for a design like this. Now, the reason why I say that, I like ribbons. I don't have any problem with ribbons. I just don't know that for me particularly, I would want something that could do pretty well both vertically and horizontally if I was going to build something like crazy. Well, I guess it would depend on my room. Maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe it wouldn't be. As long as I can get the ribbon in the right spot, I guess. And I guess if it's going to be a dream system, I guess I could get it in the exact spot that I want it to.
Yeah. Yeah, ribbons just, I mean, they have a particular sound that's hard to come by. And so, I don't know how it sounds in that design, but I'd like to hear it for sure.
I want to throw some other ideas out there, some designs, some well-known designs that people have seen before. Would you guys consider ever doing something like the Wilson Audio, where there's a tweeter, a mid, another mid, and a mid, and then woofers on the bottom? There's usually two subwoofers on the bottom. So yeah, there it is. Two subwoofers on the bottom. And so this would be 1, 2, 3, 4-way speaker system. Might even be 4.5. I'm not sure.
It looks like those woofers are different sizes in that bass bin, unless I'm wrong. In that bottom picture, it looks like they're almost different sizes.
It does look like
Might be. It does look like it, actually. It does. It says 5-way. 7 driver system employs 12.5 and 10.5 inch woofer in the ported enclosure, with each of the 2 lower mid-range, upper mid-range driver and tweeter in their own enclosure modules. And if I'm going to be doing a system, I'm actually with you, Ryan. I'm going to do, if I was going to build something like this, which I would consider. Now, Wilson Audio does this a couple different ways. My understanding is you can adjust these in order to make sure it's time aligned perfectly in your room. So you can adjust these back and forth to get physical time alignment of the drivers for whatever listening position that you're going for. If I was going to do this, I'd do all sealed, all completely sealed. There's no reason to do the top part ported. And then I would use DSP on it if I needed it on the low end, but definitely all sealed. I don't see any reason why I would want to go or need to go ported with that. And I'd probably just go with a larger woofer, maybe a side mounted 21-inch woofer or something, and probably just do
I appreciate the level of effort they've put into this speaker, but that looks like a diffraction nightmare. and unless that's an active crossover, oh man, I don't know how you get that right.
Could you imagine?
If I'm not mistaken, if you take a look at where the tweeter is and all this, this is actually an acoustical fabric here that is supposed to get rid of the diffraction, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
I'm just telling you.
Last I checked, that's called a speaker grill.
Toyd's reading from the marketing material.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, it's like, remember how they used to do that in, I don't know, I think it was the 60s and 70s. They would put fabric on there, almost like a rock wool, right?
Yeah,
and they would put it,
still do this,
and it's inset inside. Now the tweeter's still flush with whatever like the rock wool is, and it's supposed to absorb those frequencies. I've never tested it.
Yeah, you see a lot of older DIYers still use that technique on forums and things like that every once in a while, especially as a fix. They'll say, "Hey, you should try adding some felt, around here or there." I'm sure it's been researched. So,
yeah, I've seen measurements of the felt. It does kind of work. I think there's better ways.
Yeah, in the planning
stage.
Well,
why don't you tell Wilson Audio that?
They know. they definitely know that design has been around for a long time, and or at least some variation of it. And it I'm sure it does very well, but um
I saw you laughing. You read it. You read it.
what?
Cameron's reading the comment down below, and he laughed.
Oh.
So, I have no problem with what Danny does, uh, as far as like designing crossovers for speaker manufacturers. Let's be honest. I talked once with a famous speaker designer. I'm not going to say who, because I think this was more of a privy conversation. And I said to him, I said, when do you know you're done with a speaker? And he goes, when management won't let me work on it anymore. And I'm like, okay, and I think there's some truth to that, especially when you start talking about some bigger companies. When the product's good enough, they're like, all right, let's just throw it out there. It's good enough. And you know what? That stinks for some people, but
Do you guys have that problem? Sorry, we're getting off topic, but I have no problem calling a speaker done.
no, I don't either.
Yeah. How about you, Cameron?
It changed when DSP came into the picture, if I'm being honest. I'm about to do passive design again, so we'll see how it how it translates. But I was very late to DSP. Just wasn't that interested in all of the mess. But having the ability to play around with it has made it a little more difficult for sure. Although I will say I can sit with the same crossover setup for weeks or months at a time and not have a problem. Every passive build I'd done before, I didn't necessarily think, I wasn't the guy that thought it was the best thing I'd heard, but I was very happy with it. And, a tiny bit of EQ if I needed it here or there. I'm not the guy that's going back into the simulation and trying to get a different slope because I think it's going to improve the sound here or there per se.
I have no problem saying it's done when it's done. There was only one time where I actually had a hard time. I'm not going to mention which speaker build it is, because it's actually most people's favorite speaker build, and it's my least favorite. And I remember being like frustrated with it, and I'm just like, it's done, whatever, it's done. And it became one of my most popular builds, and it is, and people love it. And that's where it kind of comes back to our conversation that we had last week, where I think it depends on what people are looking for when they're designing a speaker. Like for me, if I'm designing a speaker that is my ultimate end game speaker, it's going to be a full range speaker. Whether I use it in theater or not, it's going to be full range. And the reason why it's going to be full range is because I want it to have the capabilities of doing anything I want to throw at it. Why am I going to build an ultimate speaker that can only do one thing well or two things well, right? I want it to do everything well. And so I'm thinking about the materials I'm using. I'm thinking about the enclosure design. I'm not going to go with a pure rectangle. I'm going to probably go with something. Yep. Something shaped that would both help with internal reflections as well as rigidity. And one of the things that I've been intrigued about, and something I would try, is I've been looking over a lot of designs and famous designs and talking with some people. And one of the things that they talk about is with the mid-range cavity, we always think of it like a box, right? And that's because we usually build it like a box, but it doesn't have to be. For example, the rear of the mid-range cavity could be slanted at an angle. And by doing that, it helps cut down on the diffraction waves at the same frequency. It helps kind of repopulate waves at different frequencies versus all of them at the same frequency hitting the back wall. I thought that was a really good idea. The Bonicky W5, which is a very famous speaker, what they did is they actually use hardwood and they drill into it, kind of go down, CNC it, and theirs is almost like an egg shape for the mid-range. To once again, for their purposes, they think it helps with their mid-range response. So I would be interested in trying some of those concepts out as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, all of the interesting CNC and routing work, and you can do this separately too. You can create your own angled panels and then just glue them to the inside of what is a square box. So you don't even have to have the top tier carpentry skills to create a geometric enclosure with all those angles. You can do just a standard small cubic mid-range enclosure and then add panels as long as you account for that airspace. Is what something I see a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, KEF Playback Mansion says KEF Meta has crazy chamber for backways, and I think that's what we're talking about. A lot of times when we DIY, we're stuck with the constraints of what our equipment can use and utilize, right? So if we're using a saw, a table saw, and an MDF, and maybe a router, well, there's going to be some things that we just can't do. And so, obviously, when we're talking about our dream speaker, we're talking about different manufacturing methods that we could get done as well. Some people will do like a trans slam enclosure. For those that aren't familiar with a trans slam enclosure, that's basically just taking the enclosure. Let's say it's a vertical enclosure, and they're cutting up MDF pieces horizontally or vertically. You could go either way, but just the thickness of the MDF and stacking it on top of each other, gluing them together to give them a.
I've done it.
Yeah, and you can do
pain.
different shapes and stuff. Yeah, it is a pain, but it does help with, like, if you want to do a crazy mid range cavity, you could do that with a trans slam.
Yeah. My dream speaker would also be DSP, by the way. Definitely going active crossovers.
Makes things easier.
Just in case we didn't clarify that. Well, I think you have a lot more. You don't use up amplifier efficiency with passive components like you do with passive components, and you have much more flexibility for high Q notches and EQ. So what I mean by that is the Q is basically the shape of your EQ, and with a passive component, you're usually stuck with really low Q, so flat, kind of wide notches. And only down, whereas passive or active, technically you can EQ up. Be careful doing that, everybody. Really,
Yeah,
all
know
things.
the constraints.
In a perfect world, we would only cut. Okay, so only boost if you've already maybe taken your tweeter down or something, and then you want to put a boost in there. But otherwise, you can clip things electronically. Anyway, sorry, I always ramble. But yeah, my dream speaker would be a DSP crossover.
Real quick shout out to Brian Romska. We tried to talk to each other last time at Expona, and we weren't able to catch up. Brian, I hope that you come this year. If so, let me know. I will only be there Friday. It's the only day I'm going to be there. If anyone's there on Friday, I'll be there. I'll let you answer this, Cameron. Kevin Gardner says, I'm probably biased on this. Nick and Cameron, if you really like the 212 for both home theater and music, I'll put it on the table for my. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I mean, I'll just put it to you that I can't really vouch for how you're going to like this, the way something sounds, because it's so subjective. But I listen to music for hours a day, and that's at like a minimum, at least a solid hour. I'm sitting and doing nothing but listening to music. And I lived with the 212s for music and home theater for at least a year, and I was very happy. I wasn't lacking. I wasn't like,
man, we're out. I just realized we're out of time. Before we go, there's a couple things I want to mention. First of all, I will say this. Yes, I love them. I like them both for home theater and for music. They are going to be limited as far. They're more of a narrow dispersion than some of the other speakers that I like. I like a lot of really wide dispersion. They're a little bit more narrow than some of the other ones. 212 a lot, Audience 212. The only other thing that I would mention is, for me, I like to DSP the low end up a little. And I'd mentioned that actually in the build video as well. And that would be like probably the two things I would mention about it. But yes, I do like them. One thing we did not talk about, but I do want to touch on real quick. If you had unlimited funds, obviously, I know what you would say this already, Ryan. So I'm gonna change it. Let's say you had $500. only for subwoofers. Subwoofers only. Okay. Would you consider doing just like one really big 21-inch subwoofer, or would you consider doing, say, I'm trying to do the math.
Multiple
16.
smaller ones.
16 would work. 16 inexpensive 12-inch subwoofers.
Oh, 1612s for sure.
Wait. I didn't finish. Infinite baffle.
Oh, that's even better. Infinite baffle? That's the dream.
So I got this idea. I'm thinking about this. I want to hear from you guys as well on the chat. I have built a lot of a couple different subwoofers with the GRS 12 SW4. It's like $30, I think. I think it's actually 35, but you can get it for 30 if you buy 16.
It used to be $20 forever. It was $20
It used to be
for the
20.
longest time.
But let's do the math on this, right? 16 times 30 equals, and that put 0 times 30. They changed my, it's a laptop, and you know how they put things. That's $480. I have a Crown amp that could give it plenty, and that DSPs has plenty. Now, it's not as good as a mini DSP. It's very basic DSP. I'm not going to pretend like it's not. I'm thinking about doing that. Like, why not just throw 16? You could wire them all down to 4 ohm. You could wire them all to 4 ohm, run it on one channel off the Crown.
I'd probably spend a little more money and go with like maybe 8 12-inch subwoofers, or even 4 12-inch subwoofers that cost like $100 a piece. There's some nice car audio things out there. What are some?
But I think the question is, like, do we think it would be like the best $500 subwoofer? You know, I mean, like, if subwoofer system, I mean, that's like a amazing subwoofer system for $500, because you could put 4 in the left hand, 4 in the right hand, 4 in the back, 4 in the back. You know, you could spread them out throughout your whole home theater, or you could just do a crazy bass wall.
Well, it's certainly not a dream system, but if you're limited to $500, that's not a bad way to go.
I am curious, because I have a $500 21-inch subwoofer. Like, how cool would that be to say, all right, what's better, this $500 21-inch subwoofer or 16 of the cheapest subwoofers that I know that you can buy? I'm curious.
In an infinite baffle, I would put my money on the 16 cheap 12-inch subwoofers. If they're in small sealed enclosures, those cheap subwoofers are going to be choked off bad.
See, the only issue with the infinite baffle that I see with the 16s is, or with the 16 12-inch subwoofers, is a 12-inch subwoofer doesn't have the quietest motor system. For obvious reasons.
Yeah,
it's $30.
It's too cheap.
Right, it's $30.
It's too cheap.
$30.
I'd buy the car audio, like Scar, or there's another one I was thinking of. I can't remember it. There's a couple out there. You can buy like a pretty nice 12-inch driver for $80.
Oh, I might.
No, I won't be at that, unfortunately. When is that?
It's
this Friday?
No, it's in April. It's in Chicago. You should do it, because business expense, and you can take your family to Chicago. Have you been to Chicago?
This isn't a business. I've been to Chicago.
Well, you can claim it. And then, you've been to Chicago already?
Yeah, just driving through. I just stopped.
I'm going to tell you guys where to go. If you guys are going to Axpona and you have a day off and you're like, you know what? Is there anywhere I want to go? Here's where you need to go. Galloping Ghost Arcade. So if you like old arcade games, like stand-up arcade games, pinball, things like that, shooting games, whatever, you know, like if you like light gun games. Okay, I'm actually going to, I do want to respond to this, and then we're going to go. It's amazing.
Yeah,
they have every arcade game. And in fact, they have arcade games that you will not find anywhere else in the world. This guy has some of the like only ones that you can get like just one of. It's amazing. And it's like $25. You can game all day. It's crazy. It's cheap and it's fun. Last question. Not that one. The enclosure cost of 16 subs would be financial factor. Not if you go infinite baffle.
Yeah.
If you go infinite baffle, it's, well, yeah, just buy a couple sheets of MDF, cut some 12-inch holes. You don't even have to, we don't even have to recess them. Just cut some.
If you're using $30 drivers, you don't even have to paint
You don't even have to paint it. It's like super cheap. So the reason why I thought about this is I took 4 of those drivers and I put them in. They could go low, but they had to have this ridiculously huge box. And so I put 4 of these drivers in an isobaric configuration, ported them to right around 20 hertz. And the bass was insane. And if you took a look at it, as far as like in WinISD, the SPL output in that isobaric configuration was very similar to the 18-inch Ultimax as far as just output. Sound quality, no. Output, yes. And so I'm like, man, what if I did 16 of those non-isobaric? Just that. I'm curious. I am curious. I want to know if any of you guys are curious too. All right, guys, let's get going. What do you guys have coming up on your channel?
Me?
Oh. Yeah, please. I'll just defer because I'm still in that stage of I got to get settled into my new home. I'll be saying that for a few more weeks.
That's fine. I actually have all of your stuff boxed up, and I'm going to run it. So yours will be shipping out this week, Ryan. So
Oh, okay. I better buy some MDF.
well, wait till it ships out first. But yeah. So for me, I just released a video. Definitely check it out. It's on Valencia's new heating and cooling seats, heating and ventilation theater seats. They're pretty nice, but there's definitely some things that you're going to want to think about before you buy them that might actually prevent you from wanting to get them. So definitely check that out. I don't want to give away the secrets, but there are some things that I really like that they changed, and some things I'm like, I don't know. Now, the other thing that I have coming out is, for those of you who know, for my home theater, I use NAS, which stands for Network Attached Storage, right? So I use a Synology NAS. I store all of my 4K Blu-ray movies on it, and I've got thousands. I've got like a bunch. I could just grab a stack right over there. But I came up with a new NAS system. It's by Ugreen, and so I'm going to try it out, and I'm going to test it out and see if it's as good as my Synology or better. And I'll let you guys know. There's some things on it that really intrigued me, such as, and I saw this at CES, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. You can put your photos in there, and you can tell it like someone's face, like who it is, and then you can type in like find pictures of or Johnny, and it'll have all the pictures of Johnny there, and so you can pull them up and stuff. So there's some really cool features on there as far as like other storage, and I want to start storing other things on it as well. Of course, I'll still keep my Synology NAS. So I have that coming up as well. And those are my 2 big ones right now. All right, guys. That's it, man. Thanks for another great show. We'll see you guys later.
See ya.